The smoking ruins of New Eden Colony still glowed against the pale dawn sky when the news reached Earth. 3 agricultural worlds, home to 40 million humans, had been reduced to glass and ash in less than 6 hours. The Calfic Dominions. Message was clear. Submit to their expanding empire or face annihilation. In the emergency session of the Terran Council, generals pounded tables and admirals calculated fleet strengths. The mood was one of barely contained fury, plans for retaliation sketched in the air with sharp gestures and harsh words. Then Margaret Chun cleared her throat. "I'd like to volunteer," she said simply. The room fell silent. Margaret Chun, 67, years old, stood barely 5 feet tall in her sensible flats. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the kind of cardigan that belonged in a suburban kitchen, not a war room. For 30 years, she'd taught kindergarten in the Ohio Valley before transitioning to cultural diplomacy. Career change that had raised eyebrows, but produced remarkable results with previously hostile alien species. Ambassador Chun, General Harrison began carefully. The Calfics aren't exactly known for their diplomatic flexibility. They're a warrior culture that respects only strength. Margaret smiled, the same patient expression she'd used countless times when 5-year-olds insisted that 2 + 2 equaled fish. "General, I've spent 4 decades dealing with creatures who bite when they're scared, scream when they don't get their way, and think violence solves everything. The only difference is that these ones are taller." Admiral Singh leaned forward, her scarred face skeptical. "The Calfics just committed genocide, Ambassador. They're expecting us to respond with force or desperation. What exactly do you propose?" "I propose we give them something they've never encountered before," Margaret replied, opening her worn leather briefcase. She pulled out a small tin container, the kind used for homemade cookies. "I'm going to treat them exactly like what they are, frightened children acting out because no one ever taught them better." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the council's xenopsychologist, raised an eyebrow. "You're planning to what? Offer them milk and cookies?" "Among other things." Margaret's smile never wavered, but something in her eyes made the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "You see, there's something about human nature that our enemies never quite understand. We're pack animals, but we're also persistence predators. When someone hurts our family, we don't just strike back. We become part of their lives. We learn everything about them. We find out what they love, what they fear, what makes them feel safe." She stood, smoothing down her cardigan. "And then we use that knowledge to make them understand very clearly that they made a terrible mistake." The council members exchanged glances. There was something unsettling about the way Margaret spoke about kindness, as if it were a weapon she'd been sharpening for decades. "The Calfics think they know how prey species behave," Margaret continued. "They expect us to cower or rage or beg. They have no idea what to do with the predator who brings them gifts." The Calfic command ship Fist of Dominion was a monument to military might. 3 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Its bridge was a cathedral of war, all sharp angles and blood-red lighting designed to intimidate. When Ambassador Margaret Chun's shuttle requested docking permission, the Calfic officers gathered to witness what they assumed would be humanity's surrender. What they got instead was a small, grandmotherly woman in a floral dress who stepped off the transport carrying a wicker basket and beaming like she'd just arrived for a church social. "Oh my," Margaret said, looking around the docking bay with genuine wonder. "What impressive engineering! The structural integrity required for a vessel this size must be extraordinary." Fleet Commander Vexthul, a 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior, whose hide bore the scars of 100 battles, found himself momentarily speechless. In his extensive experience with conquered species, none had ever complimented his ship's architecture. You are the human negotiator? He growled, his translator rendering the question in perfectly polite English. I am indeed. Ambassador Margaret Chun, and I'm so pleased to meet you, Commander. She extended a small hand, which Vexthul awkwardly shook with one massive claw. I brought some gifts. I hope that's not presumptuous. From her basket, she produced a tin of cookies, still warm from the shuttle's food processor. Chocolate chip and my grandmother's recipe. I also brought some information about human agricultural techniques. I understand you've been having some difficulties with crop yields in the outer rim? Vexthul's tactical implants couldn't parse this interaction. His briefings had prepared him for human desperation, rage, or cunning military negotiations. Not this. Your colonies have been destroyed, he said bluntly. Your species faces extinction, and you bring baked goods? Margaret's expression grew sad, but not angry. Yes, those poor souls. Such a terrible loss. She sighed, then brightened. But that's exactly why I'm here. You see, humans have a saying, the best way to make friends is to be a friend. I suspect this whole unfortunate business started because we simply haven't gotten to know each other properly. She opened the tin, and the scent of chocolate and vanilla filled the stark military space. Several Calthic officers actually leaned forward, their nostril slits flaring. Would you care to try one? And perhaps we could discuss those agricultural issues I noticed in your planetary reports, that you're losing 30% of your harvest to a fungal blight. Back on Earth, we dealt with something similar in the 2180s. Over the next hour, Margaret somehow transformed the formal diplomatic meeting into something resembling a coffee klatch. She listened with genuine interest as Vexthul, despite himself, found himself explaining the Dominion's expansion challenges. She took notes in a small leather journal, occasionally making sympathetic noises. It sounds like you're dealing with tremendous pressure, she said finally. Growing empire, resource shortages, internal political tensions. No wonder you've been forced into such aggressive expansion. We are not forced, Vexthul bristled. We are strong. We take what we require. Of course you are strong, Margaret agreed warmly. That's obvious just looking at this magnificent ship. But strength without wisdom is just destruction, isn't it? And you strike me as far too intelligent to rely on brute force alone. Somehow, by the end of their first meeting, Vexthul had accepted an invitation to dinner on Margaret's transport, along with a data pad containing human agricultural solutions and a promise that she would return the next day with fresh cookies. As Margaret's shuttle departed, the fleet commander stood in the docking bay, cookie tin in hand, wondering what exactly had just happened. 6 months into what the Calthig High Command had begun calling the human situation, Margaret Chun had become something of a celebrity aboard the Fist of Dominion. Her daily visits were anticipated events. Officers would find excuses to pass by wherever she was meeting with their commanders, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever impossible treat she'd brought that day. Today, it was her famous apple pie, still steaming from the portable oven she'd somehow convinced the ship's engineers to install in conference room 7. The technical staff had been so excited by the challenge of integrating human cooking technology with Calthic systems that they'd worked around the clock to complete the project. Commander Vexthul, Margaret said, as she served generous slices to the assembled officers. I've been thinking about our conversation regarding your son Kethver's difficulties at the War Academy. Vexthul's expression softened. Transformation. That would have astounded his enemies. The boy lacks discipline. He questions orders, shows mercy to training adversaries. He sounds thoughtful, Margaret replied, making a note in her journal. You know, I taught thousands of children over the years, and the ones who asked why were always the brightest. Have you considered that he might be suited for strategic planning rather than frontline combat? She reached into her bag and produced a small, intricately carved wooden figurine, a human chess piece in the shape of a knight. This is for him. In human military history, the knight was considered the most valuable piece after the king and queen, not because it was the strongest, but because it could move in ways others couldn't. As Vexthil examined the gift, Margaret continued chatting with the other officers. She knew Lieutenant Zarath was worried about her daughter's upcoming bonding ceremony. She remembered that Captain Hexmal collected ancient weapons and had brought him a replica of a Terran katana. She inquired about Engineer Tolvek's sick mother and produced a small vial of medicine that, while not a cure, would ease the older Kalphic's pain. What the officers didn't know was that every gift, every gesture, every seemingly innocent question was being recorded by sensors so sophisticated they were invisible to Kalphic scanning technology. The chess piece contained a quantum transmitter that would broadcast Kethver's location continuously. The medicine was tagged with isotopic markers that would trace family connections across the Dominion. The katana's grip held a neural interface that would record and transmit every conversation in its vicinity. Dr. Elena Vasquez, monitoring from the hidden observation post on Margaret's shuttle, watched the social mapping program update in real time. The Kalvik command structure was revealing itself with every shared meal, every personal story, every moment of genuine connection Margaret built with her hosts. "It's remarkable," Elena whispered to her colleague, Dr. James Park, the mission's behavioral analyst. "She's not just gathering intelligence, she's genuinely caring for these people." "That's what makes it so effective," James replied, watching Margaret comfort a young officer who'd just learned of his grandfather's death. "She's not pretending to care. She actually does. But she's also the most ruthless strategist I've ever encountered." On the screen, Margaret was now showing the officers photographs of her own grandchildren, creating a bridge of shared experience with beings who had, 6 months ago, been responsible for the deaths of 40 million humans. The beauty of it, James continued, is that by the time they realize what's happening, they'll be too emotionally invested to hate her for it. She's not their enemy anymore. She's their friend who knows everything about them. Elena shuddered. "Remind me never to get on her bad side." Meanwhile, in Conference Room 7, Margaret was cutting another piece of pie for Commander Vexthil while casually asking about his nephew's new assignment in the Outer Rim territories. She listened with genuine interest as he explained the complex logistics of managing a multi-system patrol route. She was also memorizing every detail of the Dominion's defensive positioning, fleet movements, and supply chain vulnerabilities. But she did so with the same warm smile she'd worn while teaching children their multiplication tables. The only difference was that these lessons would have a final exam none of her students would ever forget. Asterisk. The day Margaret Shawn chose to reveal. Her hand began like any other. She arrived at the Fist of Dominion with her usual basket of treats today, cinnamon rolls that filled the docking bay with their warm, spiced scent. The Kalphic officers who had come to greet her were practically salivating. Ambassador Chun called out Lieutenant Zarath, whose daughter's bonding ceremony Margaret had helped plan. "Perfect timing, Commander Vexthil was just asking about your grandmother's recipe for that wonderful soup you made last week." Margaret beamed. "Oh, how thoughtful of him. I'd be delighted to share it. But first, I have something rather special to show everyone today." She produced a small device, no larger than a human smartphone, and placed it on the conference table. "I've been working on a little project, a gift for the Dominion, you might say. A token of appreciation for all the kindness you've shown me these past 18 months. Commander Vexthil settled into his seat, genuinely curious. Over the months, Margaret's little projects had included everything from improved water reclamation systems to entertainment programs that had become wildly popular throughout the fleet. You see, Margaret continued, her voice retaining its usual warmth, humans are naturally collaborative creatures. We like to share information, build connections, understand how everything fits together. It's just in our nature to be thorough. She activated the device, and the air above the table shimmered. A three-dimensional holographic display materialized, showing what appeared to be a map of the galaxy. But as the image resolved, the Calthic officers realized it was far more detailed than any standard star chart. "This is beautiful, Ambassador," Vextel said, though something in his expression suggested growing unease. "What exactly are we looking at?" Margaret's smile never wavered. "This is a real-time map of the Calthic Dominion's complete military and social infrastructure. Every ship, every base, every communication relay, every important person in your government." The display zoomed in on the Fist of Dominion itself. Tiny dots of light appeared throughout the ship, each one marking the location of a Calthic crew member. Names appeared next to the dots, along with detailed biographical information. "Here's Lieutenant Zarath," Margaret said conversationally, highlighting one of the dots. "Currently on Deck 7, Section C. Daughter Kessara is at the Academy on Kelthar Prime. Here's her location, too. And here's her boyfriend, Jextel, who you don't know about yet, but who she's planning to introduce to you next month." The room had gone dead silent. Every eye was fixed on the display, which was now showing not just the ship, but the entire Calthic Empire. Millions of dots, each representing a person, a place, a secret. "Oh, and Commander," Margaret continued, her tone still cheerfully conversational, "here's your son Kethfer. He's not at the War Academy right now. He's actually in the underground resistance movement on Sector 7. You didn't know about that either, did you?" Vexthel's voice came out as a strangled whisper. How do you know all this?" Margaret gestured toward the remnants of 18 months' worth of gifts scattered around the room. "Every present I gave you, every recipe I shared, every kind word and gesture, they were all exactly what they appeared to be, genuine expressions of care and friendship. But they were also the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history." She picked up the wooden chess piece she'd given Vextel months ago. "This night has been broadcasting your son's location continuously. The medicine I gave Engineer Tolvec for his mother contained isotopic tracers that mapped your entire family network. The soup I made with my grandmother's recipe, it included compounds that made every Calthic who ate it trackable by our sensors. The implications were staggering. Every Calthic official Margaret had befriended was compromised. Every secret they'd shared, every location they'd visited, every person they'd contacted, all of it was known to humanity. The fascinating thing," Margaret said, her voice taking on a different quality, still warm, but now edged with something much colder, "is that none of you can even hate me for it. Because everything I did, every kindness I showed, every moment of care, it was all completely genuine. I really do care about your families, your hopes, your fears. I really do want what's best for you." She stood, smoothing down her cardigan. "Which is why I'm here to offer you a choice." A holographic display shifted, showing the three glassed worlds of the former human colonies. Margaret's expression grew sad as she looked at the barren, lifeless spheres. 40 million people," she said quietly. "Farmers, teachers, children, grandparents. People who had never hurt anyone, whose only crime was being born human in a galaxy where the Calthic Dominion needed to make a point." She turned back to the assembled officers, her eyes still kind, but now carrying a weight that made even the battle-hardened Calthics shift uncomfortably. "Now, I could have used all this information I've gathered to simply destroy you. Your fleet positions, your supply lines, your family connections. We could have crippled your empire 6 months ago. But that's not really the human way, is it?" Margaret picked up one of her cinnamon rolls, taking a small bite before continuing. You see, humans are persistence predators. We don't just kill our enemies, we convince them to change. We make them part of our pack. We show them that there's a better way to live. Commander Vexthal found his voice. What ... What do you want? I want you to understand something about human nature, Margaret replied. We're not just vengeful, we're educational. Every species that has ever tried to harm us has learned the same lesson. It's better to be our friend than our enemy. Much better. She activated another function on her device. The holographic display now showed detailed analyses of Calthic society economic models, resource distribution charts, political stability indices. Your empire is dying, Margaret said with genuine compassion. Resource depletion, internal strife, military overextension. You're conquering worlds because you're desperate, not because you're strong. But here's what I don't think you realize: humanity can help you. The display shifted again, showing agricultural techniques, medical advances, terraforming technologies. We can solve your food crisis. We can treat diseases that have plagued your species for centuries. We can teach you how to build sustainable colonies instead of constantly needing to conquer new ones. Lieutenant Zareth leaned forward. Why would you help us? We destroyed your worlds. Margaret's smile was infinitely sad. Because that's what humans do. We're pack animals, Lieutenant. Once you're part of our pack, we take care of you. And whether you realize it or not, you've been part of our pack for 18 months. She looked around the room at faces that had become familiar, dear to her. Every one of you has shared your fears with me, your hopes for your children, your struggles with this war. You've become my friends, and humans don't abandon their friends. Commander. Vexthal's voice was barely above a whisper. But the colonies ... will be remembered, Margaret said firmly. There will be reparations, not just financial, but cultural. Calthic children will learn the names of every human who died. You'll help us build memorials on the glass worlds. You'll teach your people that some lines should never be crossed. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. But here's the choice I'm offering you. You can continue being our enemies, in which case we'll release everything we know about your government to your own people. Your civil war will last decades, and when it's over, there won't be a Calthic dominion left to remember. Or Margaret's expression brightened, returning to the warm, grandmotherly smile they'd all come to know and love. You can become our friends. Real friends. Partners. We'll help you rebuild your empire into something sustainable, something that doesn't require constant conquest. We'll share our technology, our knowledge, our resources. Your children can grow up in a galaxy where they don't have to be afraid of the humans. She started packing her basket, as if this had been just another pleasant social visit. Take your time deciding, she said cheerfully. Though I should mention, I've already started teaching your great-nephew how to bake cookies. He's quite talented. I think he might open a bakery on Kelthor Prime when he's older. As Margaret headed toward the door, Vexthal called out, Ambassador ... how long have you known? About everything? Margaret paused, looking back with the same patient expression she'd worn during thousands of parent-teacher conferences. Commander, I've known everything I needed to know about you since the day I met you. The question was never whether I could destroy you. It was whether I could save you. She left them sitting in stunned silence, surrounded by the remnants of 18 months' worth of kindness that had been simultaneously the most effective intelligence operation in galactic history and the most genuine expression of human nature. Ever witnessed. Within 48 hours, the Calthic Dominion would agree to her terms. Within a year, they would be humanity's most trusted allies. And within a generation, Their children would grow up speaking of the day their people learned that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the galaxy is someone who genuinely cares about your well-being. The grandmother's gambit was complete. Asterisk.